Howdy, folks. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am your host, the Mighty Bjorn, and today for you, I have another Dungeons and Dragons video. And if you couldn't tell from the introduction there, I'm going to be talking a little bit about medieval combat. In particular, I'm going to be talking about the effectiveness of medieval armor versus weapons that were used. This is something that's actually, from what I can tell, is lacking in Dungeons and Dragons. It was something that used to be there, but it's no longer there, and it's something I decided it's been a process I've been working on over years now, understand, to bring this mechanic into Dungeons and Dragons. It was kind of a sleeper mechanic back in the day during AD&D, but let's dive on into the full context here, particularly what it has to do with. It has to do with the historic standpoint that different armor was effective against different types of weapons, and different weapons was effective against different types of armor, such as with chainmail. While chainmail was great and effective against slashing type weapons such as swords, well, it really wasn't so good against blunt force trauma type stuff like maces and morning stars, which, it you kind of, the one issue with how it's done in Dungeons and Dragons, you have a one size fits all armor class, and that it's not believable, it's not accurate. And AD&D actually did work on this. It was an optional rule that was made back in the day. Now this is actually AD&D second edition. This is actually the player's handbook I had when I first started playing Dungeons and Dragons way back in the day. Of course, this is, I probably just dated myself, but either ways. But there was an optional rule with a chart. And as you can see here, this is table 52. And essentially what this is they did the armor classes. It's the armor itself had a base armor class, and then it was modified even further if you wanted to by what type of damage type was being used to attack said armor wearer. And essentially, it allowed for an interesting mechanic. It was kind of a difficult mechanic to implement because realistically, the character sheets didn't do a good job being able to implement something like this. And of course, now if you'd want to do something like this, you'd have to modify your character sheets to have this information on it. So it's nice and handy for the players. Now, while realistically, I am not actually a fan of the Dungeons and Dragons armor class system where armor provides an armor class bonus based on what type of armor you wear. I've personally never really been a fan about it since I've seen just other better ways of doing armor class. Star Wars D20, I felt, had one of the best systems where basically your armor class was judged, of course, by your dexterity mod, but by your character class and level. So as you grew in level, your armor class actually improved, which kind of gives me it kind of gives the illusion that as the character becomes a better combatant, they're better at, dodging and taking cover and stuff of that nature. They're just better at avoiding getting hit, which I feel is a more realistic approach to how the armor class system should work. And then armor in Star Wars D20 provided a damage reduction. And with that being said, this is actually a system that I've used for my D20 homebrew games. So it's not, it's a system I'm pretty familiar with and I actually really like. Well, with that being said, D&D did try to bring something like that to Forebear with Unearthed Arcana. This is for D&D 3.0, but it also works for 3.5, where it had multiple charts that you could follow through, and essentially armor gave a damage reduction, and then armor class, or your armor class, was actually judged by your character class and level. But the problem is the system that is in D&D is so ingrained in D&D because it's been in D&D for so long that I kind of just stuck with what they have in the books because it kind of throws balances off going to that kind of system. and it wasn't really designed to really have that, in my opinion. But moral of the story goes is the advanced armor mechanics, weapons versus armor mechanics, kind of went away when Wizards of the Coast essentially bought TSR and got Dungeons and Dragons. And when they came out with third edition, they didn't add those rules to the game, even as an optional. And as far as I know of, there is no source out there for those rules. Well, over the years, I've been kind of messing with and um, making a document, if you will. Well, I just made the document recently because I finally decided to publish the rules online. But essentially, I came up with an optional rule set that was influenced by the AD&D Player's Handbook table that I showed you earlier. And I brought these rules over into Dungeons & Dragons. It'll work for 3.0, work for 3.5. It'll even probably work for 4.0, for 4th edition as well as 5th edition. But I'll have a link in the video description down below that people can go download the rules, check it out, and see if they want to use something like that. It also covers natural weapons versus armor, essentially bite attacks, claw attacks, etc., as well as it also covers horse barding or, whatever, basically mount armor is barding, not barding as in I'm playing a lute. But anyway, folks, I just figure I would share that to essentially the D&D community at large. Everyone's welcome to it. They can modify it, whatever. There's a notice in there about it, and basically it's just telling you, yeah, go ahead, print this, modify it, do whatever you want with it. Stuff of that nature. Anyway, folks, hopefully you all enjoy the video. Thank you very much for tuning in, and have yourself a wonderful day.